What the Tech? Hey guys, this is Rich, and today on What the Tech, we're going to take a look at alignment, what it is, how do you go about checking it. Alignment's one of those buzzwords anybody that's been around HPA for any length of time has heard, but a lot of people don't really understand it or don't really feel comfortable with checking it and adjusting it. So we're going to take a look at how we check alignment and some ideas on how you go about fixing it. So let's jump right in. Alright, so the way people have been checking alignment for quite a while, and this is the way we suggested quite a while ago, is basically, this is your barrel, this is your hop up, basically shining a light up the feed tube, and then visually looking down the barrel. And you can see, generally, when you're looking down there, what you're going to be able to see is you're going to be able to see the barrel. You're going to be able to see the nozzle as well, and the nozzle will either look nice and centered like it should, or it will look off to one side, or high, low, something like that, and you can see where you need to adjust it. So let's talk about why that method is not wrong per se, but not always completely accurate. What ends up happening sometimes is the hop-up fits into the front of the gearbox. You can actually get into situations where if that fit between the hop-up and the gearbox is tight, for instance, again, here's our barrel, it will be held in place by the gearbox. Here's our gearbox over here. And it'll need to line up with the gearbox over here. But that line is not straight with the barrel. But it gets forced into that position. Then what you end up with is one of two things. Either you bend the barrel a little bit to make it fit into position, or the parts within the hop-up themselves shift a little bit with respect to each other so that it can line up. But either way, the end result is when you're looking down, because it's still held centered, the hop-up itself is held centered on the gearbox real closely, it'll still look like it's centered. It'll still look good, and your eye isn't going to pick up on the slight curve in the barrel or the parts being shifted a little bit. Sometimes it'll look good, and then you'll take it apart and you'll find that the nozzle maybe has some marks, like it's rubbing on the hop-up or something along those lines, or it's still not shooting real well, but it looks good. So we're going to talk about an alternative method for how to check the alignment that works a lot better. So what you're going to need is your gun and a donor barrel, and that's about it. You need those two things, and maybe you're going to want to do it in a pretty well lit area so you can see clearly. But other than that, don't need a flashlight, don't need anything like that. So let's talk about how to do this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our barrel. As you can see, we've got the system installed in the gearbox, and we have removed the hop-up and barrel from the gun. You want barrel with the hop-up off, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the barrel down the inner barrel. If you watch, you'll be able to see it come out right there. And all I'm going to do is this lets me visually check whether it's lined up. You can see if the nozzle actually lines up correctly from the side, and you can look from the bottom and see if it lines up well from the bottom. Now, there may be some guns that this doesn't work real well on, but for the most part, especially any standard M4, this is by far the best way to go about checking. And you can see where you need to adjust it if you need to adjust it. All right. So you've checked your alignment and you found that it's off for some reason. We can't cover every single gun and how you would go about fixing it. And we can't even really cover every single variant because there's a lot of them, but I'm going to give you some general ideas specifically for M4 style platforms as far as how you might go about adjusting it. Let's go ahead and split the receiver apart here. There's basically two ways that the alignment can be off. It can be off vertically, it can be off horizontally, so side to side. Of the two, generally side to side is a little easier and more reliable to fix. Generally, basically what you're going to do is you need to space the gearbox on the two sides here between the receiver and the gearbox. Generally, we put we'll drill and put in some set screws on each side, and that allows you to adjust it. So right down in this location, put a screw in on that side, and again a screw down in on that side, and then you can adjust it back and forth, and you can get it centered right where you want. And once you get it, you can Loctite those screws in place, and they'll never move, and it reliably goes back together the same way every time. Vertically is a little more tricky if that's off sometimes, because in theory, this gearbox shouldn't be able to move vertically. In theory, it's held in place by these two pins. However, sometimes those pins either are not in the right location or they are loose, so the gearbox has some slop in it. One way or the other, if it's off vertically, generally what we will do is we'll remove this front pin first. Remove that guy, and just try to adjust the vertical with the back pin in place, the back body pin there in place. On a lot of guns, the reason that most often when we see the alignment off vertically, what we see is it's too high. The nozzle is sitting up too high in the receiver. Usually, this is because the buffer tube is going into the back of the gearbox. This one's been modified, you can see, so that's not an issue on this platform at this point. But it's going into the back of the gearbox with the buffer tube adapter, and that's getting tightened down. And that's pivoting the gearbox around this point, and it's pulling it, rotating the gearbox backwards or counterclockwise, which pulls the nozzle up. If that's what you're finding, what you're going to want to do is loosen the buffer tube up and tighten down the grip screws first, because the grip screws are pulling on an angle like this. And if we remove this pin, now when they're pulling the front of the gearbox down lower. So you're gonna, if it's too high, which is by far the most common thing we see with alignment on M4s, you just go ahead and tighten the grip down first. Maybe tighten it down a little bit at a time, and you can go back and check the alignment as you go. Put the upper receiver back on and check it a couple times, and then snug down your buffer tube screw, and don't just go nuts on that. Snug it down as much as it needs to be, but don't crank it down super tight, because you might pull it back up. Usually those methods will get you lined up. Sometimes in more extreme cases, you may find that the gearbox can't sit in the right position in the lower receiver. This usually is because people are using a mismatched gearbox and receiver. They're using a different brand gearbox than the receiver they're using. We don't really have time to go into how to fix that issue right now, but generally we just recommend use the same brand, preferably the same gearbox that came with the gun, but at least the same brand gearbox, so that you don't run into that type of a situation. That's generally how we go about fixing basic alignment issues. I highly recommend using this method, running the barrel down, visually check how it lines up with the nozzle, because it's going to makes it much easier to pick up on misalignment than the way it's been done in the past. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comments section below, and we look forward to seeing you guys out on the field.